Listen closely, my friends. Deep within the architecture of your being, there is a version of you that already exists. It is a version of you that no insult can provoke, no betrayal can break, and no rejection can force into questioning its own inherent worth. This unshakable self is not hidden because the world successfully defeated it. It is hidden because, little by little, day by ordinary day, you voluntarily surrendered your peace to people and circumstances that never earned the right to hold it. Every careless opinion you internalized, every cold silence you obsessed over, and every subtle moment of disrespect stole a microscopic piece of your attention. This erosion did not happen overnight. It happened so quietly that reacting became your default habit, and true, deep-seated calm became something you only vaguely remembered, like a dream fading upon waking. But what if absolutely everything you have been taught about strength is fundamentally incomplete? What if real power was never found in winning exhausted arguments, proving your detractors wrong, or desperately manipulating the world to finally understand you? What if the greatest victory a human being can achieve is so profoundly quiet that nobody even notices it? Except the person who tried, and entirely failed, to shake your soul. That is the sacred secret the ancient Stoics guarded, and it is the exact reason their words continue to outlive empires, outlast kings, and echo through civilizations that have long since turned to dust. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote his meditations not in a comfortable palace, but in the freezing mud of the Germanic front lines. He was surrounded by relentless war, devastating plagues, political betrayal, and the constant shadow of death. He was not writing from a place of peace, he was writing from the absolute epicenter of chaos, reminding himself daily that no external storm has permission to enter the human mind unless the owner foolishly unlocks the gate. That single, monumental realization transformed suffering into discipline, paralyzing fear into crystal clarity, and ordinary men into untouchable legends. Tonight, you are not here to casually consume another motivational speech that will evaporate from your memory by tomorrow morning. You are here to fundamentally rebuild the architecture of your mind, stone by stone, choice by choice. You are here to construct an inner citadel so absolute that the world can scream outside your walls without moving a single thing that lives within them. You have likely been making one catastrophic mistake your entire life, and chances are, you never even noticed it. You believed that other people were the actual source of your pain. You thought the insult, the betrayal, the rejection, and the silence were the reasons you lost your peace. But the Stoics asked a question so psychologically devastating that it has survived for over 2 millennia. Did they truly wound you? Or did you hand their fleeting words a permanent sanctuary inside your mind? That single question is the absolute dividing line between those who are enslaved by the world and those who govern themselves. This is where your transformation begins. By mastering the following principles, you will slowly dismantle the fragile version of yourself, replacing it with someone the world can no longer control. Principle 1. Command the sacred pause before the reaction. There is a moment in time so infinitely small that the vast majority of the human race never even notices it exists. It is a microscopic fraction of a second suspended silently between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. It is invisible, weightless, and incredibly easy to ignore. Yet, hidden entirely inside that tiny, suspended space is the complete difference between a person who rules their own destiny and a person who spends their entire life being helplessly yanked around by the world. The modern world does not control you with iron chains. It controls you by hijacking your reflexes. One casual insult, and you instantly detonate. One unexpected rejection, and you immediately begin interrogating your own worth. One delayed text message, and your imagination feverishly begins writing tragic stories that reality never even approved. Every predictable, emotional reaction you give quietly hands another piece of your freedom over to someone who never deserved it. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus grasped this long before modern psychology gave it a clinical name. Born into brutal slavery, his body was broken by a cruel master, but his mind remained untouchable. He stated, "It is not what happens to you that disturbs you, but the judgment you make about what happens." Think about the profound gravity of that statement. The external event arrives first. Your internal suffering arrives second. Between those two distinct moments, your mind rushes to write a script. If someone reads your message but does not reply, the objective, naked fact is simply that they did not answer. But your undisciplined mind refuses to leave the bare fact alone. It starts whispering, "They are losing interest. You said something wrong. They are replacing you. This relationship is over." Within seconds, your heartbeat fundamentally changes, your chest tightens, your peace disappears. Not because reality actually changed, but because your imagination declared an all-out war before the evidence even arrived. This is exactly how emotional slavery begins. Not with a cinematic tragedy, but with thousands of tiny, unexamined reactions repeated every single day. Eventually, toxic people do not even need to actively manipulate you anymore. They already know exactly which words will trigger your rage, which silence will awaken your deepest fears, and which criticism will make you doubt your own sanity. The exact moment they can predict your reaction, they already possess the deed to your mind. The next time life provokes you, do not rush to answer. Do not rush to defend your fragile ego. Do not rush to prove your point. Protect the silence between the event and your response, as if your life depends on it. Take one slow, deliberate breath. Let your emotions speak to you, but absolutely refuse to let them make the final decision. Every time you master that single pause, you reclaim a piece of your soul that the world has been actively trying to steal for years. Principle 2. Divorce naked facts from mental fiction. There is an invisible weapon your mind uses against you every single day of your life. It operates so quietly, and feels so deeply familiar, that you mistake it for reality itself. It does not attack you with facts, it attacks you with stories. And the most terrifying part of this internal betrayal is this: your physical nervous system reacts to those fictional stories as if they were already absolute truth. A message goes unanswered. A friend walks past you in the hallway without smiling. A colleague's tone of voice drops an octave for a single sentence. These are just facts. They are small, ordinary, and fundamentally meaningless on their own. But the human mind deeply despises a vacuum, so it immediately becomes a tragic novelist. It writes betrayal where there was only silence. It writes rejection where there was only distraction. It writes catastrophic endings where life has not even finished writing the first chapter. This is why millions of people walk through life utterly exhausted without ever having fought a single real physical battle. They are not suffering from the harshness of reality. They are suffering from the horror movies constantly playing on an endless loop inside their own heads. Every fear becomes a dark prediction. Every doubt becomes concrete evidence. Every remote possibility becomes an absolute certainty. Before a single truth is actually revealed, their peace of mind has already been decimated by an imagination that never learned to distinguish between uncertainty and real danger. Seneca, the great Roman philosopher and statesman, warned humanity about this cognitive trap nearly 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Read that again. He was not saying that physical or emotional pain isn't real. He was stating that the first wound is inflicted by life, but the second, much deeper wound is almost always inflicted by your own interpretation. And for most people, that second wound is the one that never, ever heals. Marcus Aurelius practiced a psychological discipline that very few people have the courage to attempt. Whenever a chaotic emotion began taking the wheel, he deliberately stripped the triggering event down to its naked, unadorned truth. No assumptions. No dramatic conclusions. No emotional decoration. Just the raw reality. Because reality, no matter how harsh, is almost always lighter than the suffocating burden your imagination forces you to carry. Truth is remarkably quiet. Fear is deafeningly loud. Most people confuse the volume of the voice for the validity of the truth. The next time anxiety begins tightening its grip around your throat, ask yourself, what do I actually know for a fact, and what am I merely assuming? Facts demand clarity. Assumptions demand panic. And clarity is an environment where fear simply cannot survive. Principle 3. Refuse to make others' opinions your identity. There is a prison so entirely invisible that millions of people live and die inside it without ever once realizing they were trapped. It has no concrete walls, no iron chains, and no locked doors. It is built from something infinitely more dangerous, subtle, and pervasive: the desperate, suffocating need to be accepted. The exact moment your internal peace becomes dependent on another person's external approval, your freedom no longer belongs to you. It belongs entirely to the people whose opinions you fear the most. Reflect on how many major life decisions you have made that were never truly yours. Think of the authentic words you swallowed and choked on because you feared judgment. Think of the bold, vibrant dreams you quietly abandoned in the dark because someone laughed at them in the light. Think of the hollow, perfectly curated version of yourself you performed just to avoid the sting of rejection. Little by little, year by year, you stopped asking, "Who am I?" and started frantically asking, "Who do they want me to be?" That is how a human soul slowly disappears. Not in one explosive, noticeable moment, but through thousands of quiet, agonizing compromises that no one else ever notices. Diogenes, the ancient Cynic philosopher, understood freedom in a way that still profoundly terrifies modern minds. When Alexander the Great, the wealthiest, most powerful conqueror alive, stood before Diogenes and offered to grant him absolutely anything he desired in the known world, Diogenes gave an answer that history never forgot. "Step aside. You're blocking my sunlight." Imagine the staggering, almost incomprehensible level of inner sovereignty required to value your own peace more than absolute power, your own truth more than societal approval, and your own soul more than the admiration of an emperor. That is not mere confidence. That is complete, unadulterated independence from the opinions of the world. Here is the highly uncomfortable truth most people spend their entire lives actively avoiding. The critics whose opinions keep you awake at night are currently lying awake, terrified of someone else's opinion. They are fighting brutal battles you cannot see, carrying deep psychological wounds you did not inflict, and living inside insecurities that have absolutely nothing to do with you. You are sacrificing your irreplaceable peace of mind for an audience that is far too distracted by their own pain to even notice your performance. So, ask yourself this paradigm-shifting question. Who would you become if nobody could applaud you, and nobody could reject you? That answer, however quiet, is the closest thing you will ever find to your true self. Principle 4. Surrender the illusion of control. A futile, exhausting war is being fought by almost every human being on this planet at this very moment. It is a war that cannot possibly be won. Not because you are weak, but because the battlefield itself was never yours to begin with. Every sleepless night you spend arguing with the past. Every hour you waste wishing someone had loved you differently. Every silent prayer begging the universe to rewrite what has already happened. This is not a display of strength. It is pure, agonizing resistance against a reality that has already moved on without you. The greatest tragedy in life is not that painful, unfair things happen to us. The greatest tragedy is that we spend years of our finite lives trying to negotiate with facts that no longer exist. We replay arguments that ended a decade ago, inventing the perfect comeback. We try to rewrite endings that have already been sealed in ink. We continuously ask, "Why did this happen to me?" when the only question that actually possesses the power to set us free is, "What will I choose to become because this happened?" Epictetus boldly divided the entire human experience into only two distinct categories: things that belong to you, and things that never did. Your character belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. Your discipline belongs to you. But other people's decisions, the relentless passage of time, death, betrayal, the economy, the past, and tomorrow, none of these have ever belonged to you. The exact moment you attempt to possess what was never yours, suffering quietly enters your life wearing the disguise of hope. Look carefully at your deepest pain today. How much of it emanates directly from the actual event itself, and how much comes from your stubborn refusal to accept that the event has already happened? A broken relationship breaks your heart once. Reliving it in your mind every single morning breaks your heart 1,000 times. Failure hurts for a moment. Refusing to let it go can imprison you for decades. Reality wounds you once. Your resistance keeps reopening the wound until the bleeding becomes your entire identity. Nature teaches this lesson flawlessly. A mighty oak tree fights the hurricane with all its rigidity, and eventually, it snaps in half. A river encounters a massive, immovable boulder in its path. It does not stop to argue with the stone. It does not curse the mountain. it simply adapts. Flowing around it, rushing over it, and still reaching the ocean. Acceptance is not weakness, it is not giving up, it is the profound moment you stop wasting your finite energy fighting closed doors and begin using that exact same energy to build a completely new path. Principle 5. Forge discipline from agony. There comes a definitive, inescapable moment in every life when pain stops asking for your permission. It kicks the door down uninvited. It does not care how kind you have been, how hard you prayed, or how meticulously you planned your future. It takes the person you loved most. It destroys the career you spent a decade building. It leaves you standing completely alone in the smoking ruins of a life you no longer recognize. And in that deafening, terrifying silence, pain asks you only one question. Will this break you, or will this rebuild you? Most people view pain as the ultimate enemy. They spend their years running from it, numbing it with cheap dopamine, hiding behind distractions, and hoping that time alone will magically erase what happened. But pain follows a very strange, undeniable law. It relentlessly hunts those who flee from it. The psychological wounds you refuse to face never disappear. They simply mutate into something else. They become the sudden, unexplainable anger that poisons your marriage. They become the paralyzing fear that shrinks your ambitions. They become the creeping doubt that whispers in your ear every time a new opportunity knocks. Unhealed pain never stays where it was born. Seneca understood a concept that sounds almost impossible until life violently forces you to learn it for yourself. Fire tests gold, and adversity tests great souls. Think deeply about the blacksmith's forge. A piece of cold iron is relatively useless. It cannot protect a soldier, nor can it cut through resistance. It is only when the iron is thrust into unbearable, searing heat, struck relentlessly by a heavy hammer, and plunged into freezing water that it transforms into a resilient, unbreakable blade. The iron does not enjoy the fire. But without the fire, it remains entirely unaware of its own potential. Nature follows one unchanging law. Everything destined to become exceptionally strong must first survive the very forces meant to destroy it. Why should your character be any different? The individuals you admire most in history were not built by easy mornings and comfortable childhoods. They were built in sterile hospital rooms where hope seemed mathematically impossible. They were built in the lonely hours of the night when nobody answered their calls. They were forged in failures that humiliated them publicly, and in betrayals they absolutely never deserved. The difference is not that they suffered less than you. The difference is that they absolutely refused to let their suffering become their permanent identity. They weaponized their trauma. The obstacle is not delaying your path. The obstacle is your path. Betrayal is a masterclass in discernment. Failure is a crash course in preparation. Rejection is a brutal seminar in self-respect. Pain is not interrupting your growth. Pain is conducting it. Stop asking why this happened to you. Ask something infinitely more dangerous. What part of my old self must die right now so that a stronger version can finally be born? That single question transforms tragedy into absolute purpose. Principle 6. Govern your internal monologue. There is someone who has spoken to you more than your parents, more than your spouse, and more than anyone who has ever entered your life. That voice has never taken a single day off. It has narrated every victory, magnified every flaw, replayed every regret, and whispered into your ear before every important leap of faith you've ever taken. The question is not whether that voice exists. The question is, has it been telling you the truth? The most dangerous lies in your life are never spoken by strangers. They are spoken in your own voice. I am not good enough. I always ruin things. Nothing will ever change. I will never become who I wanted to be. The terrifying reality of the human condition is that after hearing these sentences repeated thousands of times, you stop questioning their validity. They cease to sound like passing thoughts and begin to sound like concrete, absolute facts. When a lie repeats itself uninterrupted for years, the human mind quietly mistakes it for an identity. Marcus Aurelius understood that the ultimate battlefield was never the vast borders of the Roman Empire, it was the borders of the human mind. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Focus deeply on that word, revoke.
Not ignore, not suppress, but revoke. You have been signing a daily contract with your own insecurities, when in reality you always possess the absolute sovereign authority to tear the contract to shreds. Your inner voice is like water flowing continuously over a stone. One sentence changes nothing. But repeat the same toxic thought every single day for years, and eventually it carves the shape of your entire identity. Tell yourself you are weak often enough, and you will begin avoiding challenges before they even arrive.
Tell yourself you are unworthy often enough, and you will settle for relationships that slowly, painfully destroy you. Seneca believed the mind should be governed the exact way a wise king governs his kingdom. Not with cruelty, not with chaos, but with absolute discipline. Because a kingdom without a ruler eventually falls into the hands of ruthless invaders. Your fears know this, your insecurities know this. The moment your attention drifts, they begin ruling your thoughts as if they were the rightful kings of your life. Ask yourself something painfully honest. If another person followed you around all day, speaking to you the exact way you speak to yourself, constantly reminding you of your worst mistakes, predicting your inevitable failure, and mocking your worth, would you allow them to remain in your life? Of course not. Yet millions of people wake up every morning carrying that exact voice inside their own minds, tolerating the abuse simply because it sounds familiar. The Stoics never tried to forcefully silence the mind. They put it on trial. Is this thought true? Where is the concrete evidence? Is this actual wisdom, or is this just fear pretending to be wisdom? Thoughts are like visitors. Not every visitor deserves a seat at your table. Some deserve nothing more than a closed door. Principle 7. Starve your darkest thoughts. Not every thought that enters your brain deserves your attention, yet most people spend their entire lives treating every random cognitive impulse as if it were a direct command. A single fear enters their mind, and they entertain it. A single doubt appears, and they feed it. A painful memory returns, and they build a permanent home for it. They completely fail to realize the most fundamental rule of psychology. The mind grows whatever it is repeatedly given. Your attention is not free. It is the most valuable, highly sought-after currency you possess. Imagine planting two seeds in the exact same patch of soil. One seed is fear, the other seed is courage. If you only water the seed of fear every single day, which one will inevitably overrun the garden? The answer is mathematically obvious. Yet this is precisely what millions of people do internally. They meticulously replay insults instead of celebrating their victories. They rehearse potential disasters instead of visualizing possibilities. They breathe life into yesterday's pain instead of building tomorrow's strength. Then they look around and wonder why peace never visits them. Marcus Aurelius warned himself of this trap with remarkable simplicity. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Think about the sheer weight of those words. Your future is not shaped only by your physical actions. It is shaped by the thoughts you repeatedly choose to keep alive. The human brain has a terrifying biological flaw. It struggles to distinguish between what is actually happening in the physical world and what is being vividly imagined. Replay a betrayal often enough, and your nervous system floods your body with the exact same stress hormones as if the knife were entering your back all over again. Imagine failure every single day, and your heart prepares for crushing defeat before life has even asked you to compete. This is why so many people arrive completely exhausted at battles that never actually took place. They fought them thousands of times inside their own imagination. Attention is nourishment. Whatever you feed survives. Whatever you starve eventually dies. Fear survives only because you keep returning to it. Anger survives only because you keep replaying the insult. Regret survives only because you refuse to stop visiting a past that can no longer hear your apology. When fear knocks, acknowledge it, but do not invite it inside for dinner. When anxiety predicts a disaster, hear it out, but continue walking forward anyway. That is what true mental discipline looks like. Not the absence of darkness, but the absolute refusal to let darkness become your guide. Principle 8. Crave less, experience more.
There is a gnawing, hollow hunger that no amount of financial success, societal status, or external validation can ever satisfy. It has destroyed kings who ruled vast continents, broken millionaires who owned everything money could buy, and tormented ordinary people who spent their entire lives frantically chasing a finish line that perpetually moved further away. The cruelest part of this trap is that the victims never realize they are starving, because the greatest addiction in the modern world is not to pleasure, it is to more. More money, more recognition, more followers, more praise, more certainty, more control. You routinely lie to yourself, promising that once you acquire just one more thing, you will finally be at peace. But a peace built on one more never actually arrives. Desire is the equivalent of drinking ocean water to cure your thirst. The more you consume, the more desperately dehydrated you become. You do not escape the prison of dissatisfaction. You simply buy better furniture for your cell. Every advertisement whispers the exact same lie. You are incomplete until you own this. Every social media comparison works to convince you that someone else's highlight reel is concrete proof that your own life is lacking. Slowly, without noticing, your happiness stops depending on who you are and starts depending entirely on what you can acquire. That is not ambition. That is psychological captivity disguised as success.
Seneca exposed the modern condition with brutal, timeless honesty. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Look at your current life. How many things did you once pray for? The job, the phone, the partner, the apartment, that you now barely even notice. You reach them, you celebrated for a moment, and then your mind quietly moved the goalposts again. This is the oldest trick desire has ever played. It never lets you arrive. It only convinces you to keep running. Gratitude is not just a soft, beautiful emotion for greeting cards. It is a fierce act of psychological rebellion against a heavily commercialized world that actively profits from making you feel inadequate. The Stoics never demanded that you abandon ambition. They demanded that you never become dependent on the outcomes. Build vast wealth, but do not worship it. Love people fiercely, but do not try to possess them. Chase true excellence, but never tie your core identity to things that fate can snatch away in a single afternoon. Because in the end, true freedom does not belong to the person who has the most. Freedom belongs to the person who needs the least. Principle 9. Shed your expired self. There is one heavy burden almost everyone carries, yet it is completely invisible to the naked eye. It is not your past mistakes. It is not your financial debt. It is not the people who betrayed you. It is your stubborn, suffocating attachment to a version of yourself that no longer exists. People constantly introduce themselves to the world through their old wounds, their expired identities, and their past failures. They live as if yesterday possesses the divine authority to dictate who they are permitted to be today. But the past has only one source of power, the power you continuously funnel into it. Some people are still living inside a heartbreak that ended a decade ago. These are trapped inside a failure that lasted only a single day. Slowly, without realizing it, they completely stop living in the present. Their physical bodies move forward through time, but their minds remain heavily chained to memories that cannot be altered. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything in nature is in a state of constant motion and transformation. Rivers never hold the exact same water twice. Trees shed their dead leaves without holding a funeral for them. Stars are born and stars inevitably collapse. Change is not the exception to the rule of life. Change is life. The only thing unnatural is refusing to let yourself evolve. Think of a snake. It literally cannot grow while clinging to its old skin. The very barrier that once protected it will eventually suffocate it if it is not shed. Human beings are no different. The identity, the defensiveness, the people-pleasing, the fear that helped you survive yesterday's trauma is the exact thing preventing you from thriving in today's peace. Something old must die before something greater can be born. Ask yourself this paradigm-shifting question. If you woke up tomorrow with absolute amnesia regarding your past failures and forgot every label people ever placed on you, who would you choose to become today? That choice is far closer to your true self than the identity you have been defending for years.
Because your future is never asking for permission from your past. Only you are. So today, let the old version of you go. Let go of the fear that kept you silent. Let go of the identity built from pain instead of purpose. Because the greatest transformation in life does not happen when you become someone else. It happens when you finally stop clinging to someone you have already outgrown. Principle 10. Attain immunity to fate. One day, life will absolutely ignore every careful plan you have made. It will slam doors shut that you were certain would remain open. It will brutally remove people you thought would stand by your side forever. It will dismantle the comfortable routines you believed were permanent fixtures of your reality. In that devastating moment, the question will no longer be how wealthy, popular, or successful you are. The only question that will matter is, who are you when everything you depended on disappears? Most people build their entire identities on a foundation of fragile, temporary things. Wealth can vanish in a market crash overnight. Physical beauty fades without asking for permission. A spotless reputation can be destroyed by a single vicious rumor. Health can evaporate between one heartbeat and the next. When fate inevitably changes its direction, people who anchor their souls to these externals do not just lose their possessions, they completely lose themselves. The Stoics vehemently refused to place their peace of mind in the unpredictable hands of fortune. They understood a truth so terrifyingly powerful that most people spend their entire lives avoiding it. Anything that can be taken from you should never become the core foundation of who you are. Because if your happiness depends on something temporary, your suffering begins the exact moment you fear losing it. Marcus Aurelius woke up every morning knowing that the empire he ruled could collapse, the people he loved could die, and his own life could end before sunset. Yet instead of living in paralyzing fear, he became utterly fearless. Why? Because he practiced loving his character more than his circumstances. He understood that fate can strip a man of his possessions, but it cannot steal his courage unless he willingly hands it over. Imagine a massive, ancient mountain standing in the dead center of a violent hurricane. The wind screams against its surface. Relentless rain crashes into its stone. Lightning repeatedly tears across the sky. Yet, when the storm finally exhausts itself and passes, the mountain remains exactly where it was. It stands not because the storm lacked power, but because the mountain's foundation reached infinitely deeper than the chaos swirling above it. This is the ultimate Stoic ideal. Do not fall to your knees praying for a life free of storms. Forge yourself into the mountain that the storms cannot move. There is a quiet, profound freedom that only a few people ever experience. It arrives when you no longer fear losing what life gave you. You still love deeply, but without frantic clinging. You still work with intense passion, but without becoming a slave to the results. You still dream boldly, but your peace no longer rises and falls with success or failure. This is not emotional coldness. This is emotional sovereignty. Epictetus said, "Never say about anything, 'I have lost it,' but only 'I have returned it.'" Read those words carefully. Every person you love, every opportunity you receive, every breath you take, none of them were permanent possessions. They were gifts entrusted to you for a little while. And when you understand that, gratitude replaces entitlement, courage replaces fear, and peace replaces desperation. The final reality. Now look back at the profound journey you have just taken. You have learned to command the pause before reacting. You have divorced facts from the fictional stories your mind invents. You have broken free from the suffocating opinions of others. You have surrendered the illusion of control. You have transformed agonizing pain into iron discipline. You have mastered your internal dialogue. You have stopped feeding destructive thoughts. You have learned to desire less and experience more. You have released the expired person you used to be. And now you stand where very few people ever choose to stand. Not because life has magically become easier, not because suffering has disappeared, but because you have changed. The world may still hurl insults at you, but it cannot define you. It may still test you, but it cannot break you. It may still take things from you, but it cannot take you. Because the greatest victory in Stoicism was never about controlling the world. It was about becoming the one thing the world could never control. The moment you finish reading this, the world around you will remain exactly the same. The same difficult people will exist, the same challenges will wait for you, the same uncertainties will loom. But if you truly internalize these principles, you will never see the world the same way again. Real transformation is always completely invisible before it becomes undeniable. Do not attempt to change your entire life overnight. Choose just one of these principles. Practice it relentlessly in the shadows every single day until it becomes integrated into your very character. Unshakable strength is never built in one cinematic moment of glory. It is built through thousands of quiet, agonizing, ordinary decisions that no one else ever sees. No one can steal a peace that you absolutely refuse to surrender. No one can control a mind that you have learned to govern, and no one can break a person who has truly mastered themselves. That is the true meaning of Stoicism. That is absolute freedom. Carry this into your next conversation, your next challenge, and your next difficult moment. Protect your mind, master yourself, and let absolutely nothing outside of you decide who you become.